Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about Captain Hook and his basslines. I got a request to remake his bassline and kind of dive into how he does his basslines, and there's some interesting things in there which we will be taking a look at. I have taken two of his songs that I've recreated the kick and the bassline from. The kick isn't perfect, but I mainly wanted to focus on the bassline. So without further ado, let's jump right into that. Actually, before we get into the real tutorial, I wanted to quickly mention that I have a Bandcamp now. Some people asked for a Bandcamp, and I wanted to mention it in this video. I saw in the edit that I forgot to mention earlier. So yeah, with that being said, if you want to get WAV file versions of my songs, you can find them in the description. There will be a link in each music video with that particular song or album or whatever. And if you want to just visit my Bandcamp and listen around and see what's all on there, then there will also be a general link to my page in the description of this video and future videos as well. So with that being said, let's get right back into the tutorial. Alright, so as you can see, we have the two tracks here. This is the first, it's Time and Space. It's one of his more popular tracks, I believe. And then there is his latest tracks, Let There Be Light. I'll put a link to the description of both of them. Or I will put a link in the description for both of those tracks, and you can listen to them if you want. The full tracks are amazing, so definitely check them out if you have the time. That being said, I'm quickly going to play both of them. And I only have one bar of each of them, because the bassline is a 1-bar loop for both of these tracks. So here we have the first one. And then we have the second one here. And that sounds like that. And then we have my recreation for the first one here. And that's the second. It might be a little bit hard to hear the first one if you're watching this on mobile. So I do recommend you put in some headphones, or maybe watch them on your PC if you have a better sound system there, because this is basically only very low end, and phone speakers tend to not be able to reproduce those frequencies. So for the understanding of the tutorial, it's best to watch it on a system that can actually put out the bass frequencies and the sub bass frequencies as well. So with that being said, let's get into the patch. And I've used the same patch for both of them. I have made a few edits in between them. As you can see, there's some automation clips, turning some things on and doing some other stuff as well. So let's actually get into it. The patch is very simple. As you can see, we have two oscillators set up here. For the first one, we don't use the B oscillator. This is just there for the second one. But I wanted to make them both in one patch. So for now, just ignore this. As you can see, we have a saw wave here with a swapped harmonics almost. I've taken the volume of the second harmonic and set that as the third, and the other way around. I think I'd lowered them a little bit more, but this is kind of what I saw in the visualizer when I actually checked it out. I can quickly show you that by looping the first kick. You'll be able to see that the third harmonic is higher than the second. So there you have that. That's the reason why I did that. Then it goes into a very steep filter, 24 decibel filter, and we're using macro 1 to slightly open and close the filter. Not much, as you can see. This will just change a few harmonics. And then no effects, and the only other thing that we have is a sidechain. So as I said, a very simple patch, but there are some interesting things that you want to do here with this patch. Let's first go over one of the more interesting things, and that's what macro 2 is doing. As you can see, all the phases have been set to 0, and we're actually using macro 2 to set the exact phase of where the waveform is starting to play. And the reason why we do that is so that we can manually phase align them with the bass or with the kick. So the tail of the kick, we're manually phase aligning the bass line with the kick. So if we look at what that looks like, you can see, if I actually play on my own project, you can see that if we're looking at here, we're pretty much always phase aligned. And if we go to the layers, you can see that this dip is always almost matching up with that dip there. And that was kind of what I was going for, making sure that this area lined up, because there was the most overlap here. So how you do that is you basically just do it manually, and for every kick you see where the phase needs to be, and then you just adjust your automation, in this case macro 2 down here, so that it matches up with the tail of the kick. And the visualizer like this, side scope where I've shown off before, really helps, because you can just use the layers version, and then you can see the bass on one layer and the kick on the other layer. If you want to know how this setup is done, then look up my video on side scope. If I remember, I'll put a link on the screen as well. So that's how you manually line them up, and this is very important. If we go into the bass patch itself, and for example we bypass the macro, you can see that our waveform gets all messed up. If we go to the summing, you can see that it's kind of wobbling around a bit more. And so to prevent that, we've aligned the phase that way. So turning that back on, that's what we have. Other than that, it's just this sidechain. As you can see, this the exact form that I have set up. Again, I've adjusted this while listening and playing it, and also having side scope open to actually see what's going on with the waveform. That way I could get a nice clean waveform, and it's a good way to do kick and bass, especially for this style of progressive Psytrance where you have very long bass notes, to manually line them up and to manually dial in the sidechain so that it looks like a nice waveform once they actually get summed. So that's the first one. And then the second one is just a small variation on that. What I noticed here is that there is this slight bit of crispiness going, as if there was a layer, a very low layer of a saw wave layered in. So if you listen carefully, you can hear that. You can hear that there's some kind of saw wave. So that's what oscillator B is doing. Oh, that messed up there. And you can see that here we're actually turning on the filtering. If I go back, let's open up. You can see we're turning up the volume, and we're also turning on, or we're turning off the filtering. For this one, I was experimenting with also using oscillator B here, but that didn't work out the way I wanted to. So that's why that automation is still here. So just note that oscillator B isn't actually going to the filter. You might have seen before that it did, but that's just the automation doing its thing. As you can see now, it's not going to the filter. And the only thing it's doing is adding just a slight bit of volume to our bassline to get that saw texture in there. So again, this is what it sounds like. I'll quickly go over the MIDIs really quick if you want to copy it. There's not much interesting stuff going on. This is basically just all octaves. As you can see, this just in the note of D. Very simple pattern here. I've covered more complex patterns before and kind of broke them down. But again here, it's just octaves up, and these two are two semitones down. So it's not very much special in that thing. There's no special complex thing going on. The main complex thing here is aligning your phases and making sure that your phase is lined up, and the sound design itself and the sidechaining and everything else is very simple, other than maybe the sidechain form, getting this exact waveform to line up nicely with your kick might require some more advanced stuff here in the sidechain. So that's going to be it for today. Again, very simple sound, so I try to make it as exciting as possible and show off some of the tricks that are involved in making something like this, but there's not much to it. That being said though, if you like this kind of video, feel free to leave a like. If you have another request you would like to see, leave a comment down below. I'm thinking of kind of doing more artist overviews in these kind of situations when they're very simple sounds, so I might come out with a video kind of covering the style of an artist. Even though I'm against like copying artists and what they're doing, I think it could be interesting to dive into like the sound design that makes a certain artist work and why their tracks work and what you can learn from that. So with that being said, that's going to be it for today. Again, if you like this video, leave a like, and if you're new, feel free to subscribe. But that's it, and for today, bye bye.